Okay, this is the second video for your grade 8 algebra warm-up. These are still one-step algebraic equations, except in these examples, these are one-step algebraic equations with no constant, just a coefficient. So in all of these, it's still one step to isolate. You just have to do one thing, but we're not getting rid of a constant because there is none. We're only getting rid of the coefficient. So in this first one, we have 3x equals negative 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create 3 mini scales. And I'm going to divide this side equally on each of those scales. So if there's 3 x's, I'm going to put one of those on each. And then I'm going to take the other side and equally disperse it on those 3 scales. And what I end up having here is x equals negative 1. If 3 x's have the value of negative 3, then each x must have a value of negative 1. And if I look at that from an algebraic standpoint, using opposite operation, 3x equals negative 3. If I divide those 3x's into 3 piles, or divide it by 3, because that's the opposite of multiplying by 3, is dividing by 3. So I divided over here, I divided my x's into 3 piles, if I have 3 of them. Here I'm dividing the 3x by 3, and they're opposite operations. So I'm left with just x. But if I do that to one side, I have to do it to the other. Negative 3 divided by a positive 3 is a negative 1. Same answer. And technically, that's a grade 8 question. The one we just did is a grade 8 question because division by negatives is a grade 8 outcome, not a grade 7 outcome. In the second example, I have 4 equals 2x. So I still have my x's on, they're isolated. I have x's isolated by themselves, but I don't have one of them, I have 2 of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create 2 separate scales and put an x on each of them. And it doesn't matter what side you put them on. I'm going to, because I'm used to seeing them on the left, I'm going to put them there. And I'm going to take all of what's on this side and disperse it equally on those scales. And it now clearly shows that each x has a weight or a value of positive 2. Okay? So if 4 positives is equal to 2x, then 1x is equal to positive 2. If I look algebraically, if I want to isolate it, I want to do the opposite of multiplying by 2, which is dividing by 2. That's the opposite operation. I'm left with x over here. Divide the other side by 2 as well. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So in the second example, both have a value of 2 for x. In the third question, it's a little tricky. It says, I don't have all of x. I only have half an x. And instead of drawing my stick like I did up here I drew a stick. I'm going to draw like a fatter stick that's half full. That represents half of an x. So if I was to double this side, right? If I was to double this side, this thing here, if I was to flip it and merge it through the miracle of smartboard technology, I would have a full x, right? So by doubling the amount of it, so what I really did is I doubled this side. I'd have to double whatever the weight is of the other side. And this tells me that x, a full x, not half an x, but a full x has a value of negative 2. If I think about that numerically, if I take this side here, this says x divided by 2. The opposite of dividing by 2 is multiplying by 2. Those are opposite operations. I have x over here, but if I multiplied the left by 2, I must multiply the right by 2. Negative 1 times a positive 2 is a negative 2. In both cases, I get the same answer. And in the last question, who could read what that says? What does that equation say? If I was to read it to somebody who doesn't see it, what would it say? A quarter of x is equal to 2. A quarter of x is equal to 2. So if whatever number x is, a quarter of it is equal to 2. So if I was to multiply that by 4, if I was to draw 4 of these, I suppose, well, let's just do that, infinite clone. So if I doubled it, if I tripled it, if I quadrupled it, I would have a full x. So that if I multiply that side by 4, I would have to take this side and double it and triple it and quadruple it. And now I would see that x is equal to 8. X is equal to 8. If a quarter of x is equal to 2, then a full x would be equal to 8. And over here, this says x divided by 4 equals 2. So if I use the opposite of dividing by 4, which is multiplication, I get x. If I multiply this side by 4, I get 8. X equals 8. Okay? So those are one-step algebraic equations, no constants, just coefficients. Remember, slap that like button, smash it, or smack it, just smack it around, and make sure you subscribe.